Good morning, Sarah. I'm so excited that you got a sourdough starter and you want to experiment with making bread. So I figured I would make a little video to help you out. And this morning we're going to make some sourdough pizzas. We're going to start making the dough for that. We're going to cook it this evening. Last night I got my starter out of the refrigerator. It had been there for a week. I fed it after letting it sit out and warm up to room temperature and ferment a little bit more. And here, last night when I fed it, I let it sit out on a counter overnight, and this is all temperature dependent, and it was about here when I started, and this morning it's way up here, and you can see all the wonderful bubbles this thing has. So lots of fermentation going on. Smells wonderful. It's mainly a rye-based starter. Perfect for rye. Now I've already measured things out, so I'll let you know. Making 2 dough balls. I like about 250 grams of flour. We're going to do everything by weight and percentages. That's the key. So when we talk about our dough that we're making, everything is going to be as a percentage of the amount of flour. So the hydration, the amount of liquid we put in this, is 75% hydration. So we've got 500 grams of flour. It's going to be 3% malt that I added to it. On the liquid side, you could use milk, but I used kefir because I had it. 25% kefir, 50% distilled water, like nice clean water. That gives us 75% hydration. To that I'm adding 25% leaven, my starter here. That's all I'm using. This is going to be cool because it's completely all natural in terms of the leaven. Leaven's what makes it rise, obviously. I'm doing about 2.1% salt, 2% oil in the liquid there, and 3% honey. And this just gives it all a nice complexity. And I'll show you all the steps here. But first, we're going to do the very first step where we combine everything. And one of the things I'm going to use is a dough whisk. I have my dough whisk right here. It's a Danish whisk also. It is a way to keep my hands clean. You can do all this with your bare hands, which is the traditional way of doing it. I like a dough whisk, and I'll show you why in a little bit. All right. It's very early in the morning here because this is when I usually get up, so let's get things started. Alright, so it's been about 30 minutes. I like to let the dough rest after the initial mixing for about that long. It is looking pretty good. And I'm going to add the salt that I pre-measured out, slightly over 2%. And I'm going to mix it by hand and put it into a clear container so that I can monitor it. I'm going to cover it with a cloth. And every 30 to 40 minutes I'm going to give it a turn. I'll film that for you. But at this point, how long it takes before the dough's ready is time dependent. So don't rush it. Watch it. You want the bubbles to develop. You want it to start getting billowy. And get to the point where in between, when it's resting, it is starting to double in size. That'll be our bulk rise. We'll turn it out onto a lightly floured surface, and then we'll form the dough balls. So, stay with me. So I hope all that was clear. You can ask me questions in comments or send me a message some other way. We can talk about it on the phone. Anyway, from here on, for several hours, every 30 to 40 minutes, I'm going to turn the dough. That's what I call it. Basically, you'll get the gist of it from seeing, but I'm kind of going to pull up on one side and fold it over to the opposite side, and then do that sort of in a north, south, east, west kind of arrangement in the container. And we'll watch it develop. The other thing I figured I would show you right now is the starter that I just fed. And of course, this is a 1-to-1 ratio of the flour to water, doing it by weight, so 100% hydration. And you can see in here, there's really not much happening at this point. But by the end of the day, or maybe even the middle of the day, you'll see it way up here, and there'll be lots and lots of bubbles in here, showing that it is developing well. At that point, usually I stick it in the refrigerator, let it hibernate until I'm ready to bake again, which will likely be next weekend. So I'm going to do the first turn of the dough and show you that now. So Sarah, as we go along, what you're going to notice is that the dough is going to get a little more billowy. It's going to stick to itself more than the sides of the container in your hands, and that's what you're looking for. But we still have several, we still have a good amount of time to go. I hope this is getting clear. You keep it covered so that the top doesn't dry out. Again, it's temperature dependent, and one of the other tips there is I usually wet my hand before I do those turns, and that helps quite a bit with keeping your hands clean and also, leaving as much dough as possible in the container. But it's going to start getting a little more billowy. The surface is going to hold its shape after you're done for a little while before it kind of changes a little bit and flattens out. But we're getting there. This is looking like pretty good dough so far. All right. Hi again, Sarah. So, now we're getting to the end of the bulk rise, bulk ferment of the dough. The glutinous proteins are nice and long. It's what holds everything together. It's using up the starches and making carbon dioxide and causing all kinds of bubbles. Look at those wonderful, wonderful bubbles. We're about doubled in size. This thing has the most wonderful, sweet smell. We're right at the stage where I'm gonna take this thing out and dump it on the counter, a little bit of light flour. We're gonna use a dough scrape, and we're gonna cut the dough in half for this particular thing that I'm doing. And we're going to be gentle with it, but we're going to form it into dough balls. And then we're gonna do an optional step that I like to do called a bench rest, where we're gonna take those dough balls, leave them on the counter, and let them sit there for about 30-40 minutes, okay? And then we're gonna work with them to tighten up and get a lot of tension in the dough, and then we'll put it in the proofing baskets and we'll let them proof for the rest of the day until we're ready to cook the pizzas. So you'll see all this as I go along in the little video clips, and I'm trying to think if there's something else that I needed to remind you of here, but I don't think so. I think it'll be mostly self-explanatory. So let's keep on going. Stay with me.
Ba ba
nice walk, so the dough balls have had a nice bench rest. And what we're going to do now is we're going to prepare them by stretching and folding them and putting them in these little baskets here for proofing. And on that stage, you don't have to do anything. You just set them where you want them. They could be in the refrigerator for overnight or on the countertop for the right amount of time, depending on the temperature of your house. A little bit longer if it's a little bit cooler. But you want them to at least double in size in the proofing baskets. Now, the goal here is to add tension to the dough ball. And when I cut those earlier, you saw that there was one that was bigger. Because these are going to be pizzas, I do a bigger one for my oldest and a smaller one for my youngest. And essentially, it's gonna start off with a little sprinkle of flour. We don't want to use too much flour. I'll flip them over. I'll show you the stretching routine to fold them up together, very similar to what I did before in terms of finishing. And then I put them in the baskets. A little bit of flour on the cloth in the basket. You don't have to use a cloth. I like to use it. Sometimes there's a pattern in there. But we could take those dough balls once they're proofed and you use them for pizzas, which is what we're going to do. If we didn't want to use them for pizzas, they're perfectly good for just baking into an artisan style loaf. So anyway, hope you're having fun with this. And I wanted to show you one other thing. The starter. Remember what it looked like before? Remember it was about like right here? It's more than doubled in height than here. It is really developing well. Smell is wonderful coming out of there. I'm going to let it sit out probably for another hour or so. And then I'll stick it in the refrigerator and bring it out the night before I want to use it next week. All right, here we go. Hi again, Sarah. So, if you stayed with me, you made it all the way to the end here. So our dough has been proofing, and here's one of them right here. You can see how beautiful that is, how much bigger it is. This was the smaller dough ball. It's in our proofing basket, sticking up over the top a bit. That's kind of what we want. Now, we're going to turn this into a pizza for
the editor's real name
tonight. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dump it out like this and let you have a look at the dough. Can you see that okay? That is our dough ball. And at this point, I could have dumped it into a hot cast iron Dutch oven at 500 degrees, stuck it back in the oven with the top on to hold in the moisture. One of the things I would have done is use this device here called a bread lame to score the top. It would expand like crazy inside for the first 20 minutes. Then I would lower the temperature right after I put it in, and after 20 minutes take the top off and let it finish cooking for about another 20 minutes, and it would come out as a nice artisan round loaf of bread. But right now I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to smash it down and just work it like a pizza dough, which you're familiar with already. I'm going to pre-bake it in the oven for 450 degrees for about 3 minutes, bring it back out, dress it, and put it back in for 15 at the same temperature. We use a pizza stone for that, and it comes out perfectly every time. So, thank you for watching, and I hope this helps you have fun with your sourdough starter. Take care.